I went back to the place where we promised forever, thinking I would find memories. Instead, something was waiting for me, and by the end of that night I realized some love stories do not end. They wait. The night smelled of rain and old stone as cold air pressed against my skin and my shoes scraped loudly on the empty street beneath a flickering streetlight, every sound stretching the silence while her single message glowed on my phone asking me to return to the place where we first promised forever, a place abandoned by time where broken bricks and bent metal rested under the sharp scent of wet leaves, memories of her laughter rising with my uneven breath as perfume touched the air in a way that felt impossible, shadows leaning closer while unfamiliar footprints marked the dust at my feet, the wind whispering through ruins as my phone vibrated again and a message appeared saying I was standing where she waited, the cold biting deeper as pressure filled my ears, and a soft inhale sounded behind me followed by a trembling voice speaking my name exactly the way she once did. The voice speaking my name seemed to slide through the cold air and settle directly against my spine, sending a slow wave of heat and fear through my body as I stood frozen among the rubble with my heart pounding so hard it blurred my hearing, the ruins around me breathing with unfamiliar life while the streetlight above hummed faintly and cast long trembling shadows that stretched toward my feet. And as I turned my head, inch by inch, the smell of her perfume grew stronger, wrapping around my senses until it felt thick enough to touch. My chest rising sharply as memories pressed in from every direction, memories of her fingers tracing circles on my wrist, of shared silence that once felt safe, of promises spoken with certainty in youth, and the ground beneath me felt uneven as if it remembered us too, each step I took echoing with discomfort, while the night air scraped my lungs and the distant city noises faded into nothing, leaving only my breath and the subtle shifting sounds around the cafe remains, bricks settling, glass grinding softly, wind sliding through hollow spaces like a warning, my phone still warm in my hand vibrating again though I did not look down, fear rooting my gaze to the darkness ahead where shadows thickened unnaturally, and when I finally forced my eyes forward, I saw movement that did not belong to light or wind, something slow and deliberate, my pulse racing as my ears rang and my mouth tasted dry, the sensation of being watched deepening until my skin ached with it, and I took another step forward despite every instinct urging retreat. Because love had always pushed me toward danger disguised as hope, and the smell of damp stone mixed with her perfume until past and present collided painfully, my thoughts scattering as I remembered the night she left without explanation, the unanswered calls, the hollow weeks that followed, and the promise that forever meant nothing when silence replaced her voice, the memory tightening my throat as the cold intensified, seeping through my clothes and into my bones, the streetlight flickering again and briefly revealing the shape of a figure near the rubble, not fully formed but unmistakably familiar in posture and presence, my breath catching as my heart slammed harder, the sound of it filling my ears while the world narrowed to that single shape, and I whispered her name without realizing it, the word trembling in the air between us, answered by a subtle shift as the figure seemed to lean closer, the temperature dropping further as if the night itself recoiled, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I clenched them into fists, nails biting into skin to remind myself I was awake, that this moment was real, the rough ground scraping my shoes as I stepped closer, and the scent of perfume intensifying until it overwhelmed my senses, tears burning my eyes from cold and emotion, my vision blurring as memories surged faster, first kisses under dim lights, arguments whispered through clenched teeth, laughter echoing through small rooms, all colliding violently with the sight before me, and the figure moved again, closer now, close enough that I could make out the curve of a shoulder, the fall of hair, my heart stuttering as disbelief and longing twisted together painfully, the wind dying abruptly as if the world paused to listen, my ears straining to catch any sound beyond my breath, and then the figure spoke again. My name carried softly but clearly, each syllable precise, exactly as she used to say it when she wanted me to listen, my legs weakening as shock washed through me, fear tightening my chest while hope flared dangerously bright, and I reached out without thinking, my hand trembling in the cold air, fingers brushing against nothing yet feeling resistance, a strange pressure like warmth trapped beneath ice, my breath hitching as my skin tingled violently, the sensation sending a shiver through my entire body, and I pulled my hand back sharply, staring at my fingers as they trembled uncontrollably, the silence around me growing oppressive again as the city remained distant and unaware, my phone vibrating once more, and this time I looked down. the screen glowing harshly in the dark with a new message that read, "I never left this place," my stomach twisting painfully as dread seeped in, the words pressing into my mind while the figure shifted again, closer still, the outline sharpening enough for me to recognize the tilt of her head, the familiar way she stood when uncertain, my breath coming faster as conflicting emotions tore through me, love clashing violently with fear, disbelief battling longing, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to tilt slightly as the air thickened further, my ears popping painfully while the streetlight dimmed to a weak glow, shadows stretching and bending unnaturally around us, the sound of my heartbeat now deafening, and I felt a soothe ache deep in my chest as guilt surfaced, memories of harsh words spoken years ago, of nights I did not answer her calls, of the moment I chose distance over understanding, the weight of those choices pressing down on me now as the figure raised an arm slowly, the motion deliberate and cautious, my breath freezing in my throat as the outline of her hand became visible, fingers slightly curled the way they always were when she reached for me, and my legs locked in place as panic surged, every nerve screaming yet my heart urging me forward, the cold biting harder until my teeth chattered uncontrollably, the scent of perfume now overwhelming, clinging to my clothes and skin, and I realized with a sharp twist of fear that the ruins around us felt different, heavier, as if the space itself resisted my presence, the rubble casting distorted shadows that seemed to close in, my phone slipping from my numb fingers and hitting the ground with a dull sound that echoed too loudly, drawing my attention downward for a split second, and when I looked back up the figure stood closer than before, close enough that I could see the faint suggestion of eyes within the darkness, watching me with an intensity that made my chest ache, the air vibrating subtly as if charged with something unseen, my thoughts racing as questions piled up without answers, where she had been, why she called me here, how this was possible, each question tightening the knot in my stomach, and she spoke again, her voice softer now, layered with emotion that cut deeper than fear, telling me that promises never fade, that places remember, that love leaves marks even time cannot erase. The words sinking into me painfully as the temperature dropped further and frost began to form along the edges of broken glass, my breath visible now in short, uneven bursts, my vision narrowing as dizziness crept in, and I felt the ground tremble slightly beneath my feet, the sensation subtle but undeniable, the ruins responding to her presence, and as she took another step forward, the shadows peeled away just enough for me to recognize her face, pale and unchanged yet hollow in a way that made my chest constrict, her eyes fixed on mine with a depth that carried years of waiting, my heart breaking and racing simultaneously as realization began to form, the truth pressing in slowly and mercilessly, my body reacting before my mind fully understood, knees weakening as emotions surged violently, and she lifted her hand fully now, palm open toward me, an invitation and a warning intertwined, the air between us humming softly as if charged with memory and loss, and despite the fear clawing at my chest, I felt myself leaning forward, drawn by love that never truly left, the cold no longer registering as sharply as the world narrowed to her outstretched hand, the ruins silent witnesses to a moment suspended between past and present, between longing and dread, as I stood on the edge of understanding with my heart pounding my breath shallow, knowing that whatever came next would change everything yet unable to turn away. My body leaned forward before my thoughts could catch up, muscles moving under a force that felt older than reason, my hand lifting slowly toward hers as the air between us vibrated with a low, unseen tension, every nerve in my fingers screaming as the cold thickened and the ruins seemed to draw closer around us, bricks and shadows forming a quiet circle, as if the place itself demanded attention. My breath shallow and ragged, while my heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs, and as my fingertips drifted nearer, I noticed the faint shimmer around her hand. Not light exactly, but a distortion, like heat rising from pavement in summer. My skin tingling violently as fear and longing fused into something painful and intoxicating. Memories flooding me faster now. Nights spent lying awake beside her listening to her breathing. Mornings where sunlight painted her face in gold. Arguments that ended in silence heavier than any shout. All colliding with the reality before me as the cold air burned my lungs and the scent of her perfume wrapped tighter around my senses, my thoughts fragmenting as I searched her face for answers that her eyes seemed to hold yet refused to release. And when our fingers finally touched, a shock ran through me so sharp it stole my breath completely, not pain but an overwhelming surge of sensation. warmth and cold colliding, memory and reality tearing at each other inside my chest, my knees buckling slightly as the ground beneath me vibrated again, stronger this time, dust lifting into the air as if the earth itself reacted to our contact, her hand feeling solid yet wrong, too light, too heavy, like touching a memory given shape, my heart racing uncontrollably as emotions surged violently, tears blurring my vision while her grip tightened around my fingers with desperate familiarity, the way she used to hold on during storms or crowded streets, and she whispered my name again, closer now, her breath cold against my skin yet carrying the same cadence that once soothed me, my throat tightening painfully as I tried to speak, but found no sound emerging, words trapped beneath years of regret and confusion, the ruins around us groaning softly as the wind returned in sudden bursts, circling us with sharp gusts that tugged at clothing and hair, my phone lying forgotten at my feet, vibrating faintly once more, though I did not dare look away from her face now fully visible. Pale and unchanged yet marked by an absence that hollowed her features, eyes reflecting something deeper than sadness, something like waiting stretched too long, and she stepped closer still, our bodies nearly touching as the temperature plunged further, frost creeping across broken stones and metal, my breath fogging thickly between us, the world narrowing until only her face and the crushing weight in my chest existed, my mind racing through possible idiots, denial fighting desperately against the truth forming in the back of my thoughts. And she spoke softly again, telling me she stood here every night since the promise was broken, that time passed without touching her the way it touched everything else. That love anchored her to this place where forever was spoken and abandoned, her words sinking into me like ice as guilt surged violently. Memories of the last night we stood here resurfacing in brutal clarity, the argument, my impatience, her tears glistening under the same flickering light, the way I turned away believing space would heal what understanding could not, my chest aching now with the weight of that choice as realization clawed its way forward, and the ground trembled again, more intensely, cracks spreading slightly through the rubble, as if the place itself strained under the emotional force of her confession. My hands shaking as I tightened my grip on hers, desperate and terrified, the cold biting deeper yet strangely distant as my body focused entirely on the moment unfolding, my heart splitting between the instinct to run and the desire to stay forever frozen here. She lifted her other hand slowly and placed it against my chest, right over my heart, the contact, sending another violent surge through me, warmth spreading outward from that point while my pulse thudded beneath her palm, and I gasped sharply as tears spilled freely now, grief and love intertwining painfully, her eyes never leaving mine as she whispered that she felt every beat, that she waited for it, that this place fed on promises and pain alike, holding on to what was left behind, the ruins groaning softly again as shadows deepened unnaturally, stretching and twisting around us while the streetlight dimmed to almost nothing, the city sounds completely gone now as if the world beyond had ceased to exist. My vision narrowing further as dizziness threatened to pull me down, my legs trembling uncontrollably while she leaned closer, her forehead nearly touching mine, her presence overwhelming yet achingly familiar, and I felt the cold finally seep deep into my bones, a numbing ache spreading through my limbs as the air grew heavy and difficult to breathe, panic flaring briefly as instinct screamed danger, yet my heart refused to listen. Driven by years of unresolved love and regret, she told me softly that leaving had torn something open, that promises spoken here never truly faded, that the place remembered even when people tried to forget. And as she spoke, the ruins responded with subtle movements, stones shifting, dust swirling slowly around us like ash, my ears ringing faintly as pressure built again, the sensation almost unbearable now as the world seemed to tilt slightly, her grip tightening around my hand with urgency, eyes searching mine as if asking a question she feared to voice, my chest constricting as I understood the choice forming silently between us, a choice heavy with consequence, and my breath hit sick. Head painfully as emotion surged to a breaking point, my lips parting as I finally found my voice, whispering her name with all the longing and sorrow I carried, the sound trembling in the charged air, and she smiled faintly, a sad familiar curve that shattered something inside me, the ruins responding with a low distant rumble as if acknowledging the moment, the cold intensifying sharply until my skin burned, my vision blurring further as the edges of the world darkened, and she leaned in closer still, her presence enveloping me completely, her voice barely above a whisper as she told me that love never leaves without taking something with it. that places like this keep what hearts abandon. And as her words sank in, I felt a strange pull at my chest, a tug that felt both internal and external, as if the space itself reached for me, my heart pounding wildly while my thoughts raced in fragmented bursts, fear clawing at the edges yet drowned beneath the overwhelming ache of longing, my body swaying slightly as strength drained from my limbs, the cold now absolute, numbing, yet my hands still clasped firmly in hers, unwilling to let go, the world around us trembling more noticeably now as shadows surged inward, wrapping around our legs and climbing slowly upward, the streetlight flickering one final time before fading completely, plunging us into a dim, unnatural glow that seemed to emanate from nowhere, my ears filled with a low, resonant hum that vibrated through my chest, and as she pressed her forehead against mine, I felt tears spill freely, grief and love pouring out uncontrollably, her voice soft and steady as she told me she had waited long enough, that promises demanded answers, that the place would not release what it held without balance, the words echoing painfully as understanding, solidified within me, dread and acceptance colliding violently, my heart racing as the pull at my chest intensified, the ruins responding with sharp cracks and shifting stones, dust rising thickly into the air as the ground beneath us trembled harder, my breath coming in shallow gasps as panic surged once more. Yet even then I found myself holding her closer, unwilling to step back, unwilling to break the connection, the scent of her perfume overwhelming now, clinging to my senses as the world seemed to dissolve around us, the city far beyond this moment, unreachable, my thoughts scattering as the present stretched unbearably thin, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that stole my breath as she whispered that forever was still waiting here, the words hanging heavily between us as the ruins closed in, shadows rising higher, the hum growing louder, my heart pounding desperately as the pull became stronger, drawing me deeper into the place that remembered everything, and I stood there trembling on the edge of a choice that love had set in motion long before this night. The pull loosened slowly, like a breath finally released, and the trembling ground grew still. Beneath my feet, the hum faded into silence, leaving only the soft night air brushing my skin. Her hand relaxed in mine, warm one last time before turning light. Her eyes held peace now instead of waiting. She smiled gently, the kind of smile that forgives without asking. The shadows retreated into the ruins, returning stones and silence to their places. The streetlight flickered back to life, steady and ordinary. I felt the weight lift from my chest as if a door had closed behind my heart. She stepped back, becoming softer, thinner, part of the night itself. Her voice reached me once more, thanking me for coming back. The perfume faded into the scent of rain and dust. When she was gone, the place felt empty but no longer heavy. I stood alone among broken bricks, breathing fully for the first time in years. I picked up my phone and the screen was dark, no messages waited, only quiet understanding remained. I walked away slowly without looking back, carrying love that no longer hurt. The promise stayed behind, finally at rest.